The message was 11 words long. It took the Galactic Alliance 3 days to believe it was real. Humanity withdraws from the Alliance, effective immediately. Good luck. Ambassador Celera of the Aether Concord read it 7 times before she set her data slate down on the polished obsidian table. Around her, the Alliance Council chamber buzzed with 100 different species muttering in 100 different tongues, all saying some version of the same thing. This cannot be happening. It's a negotiating tactic, said Counselor Wren, his mandibles clicking with nervous energy. They want better tariff terms on the trade routes. They'll rescind it within the week. Celera said nothing. She had spent 11 years as the Concord's liaison to the human sector, and she knew humanity well enough to know they did not bluff about withdrawal. They bluffed about everything else: poker, diplomacy, the outcomes of their absurd sporting events, but never about walking away from something they'd already decided to leave. She was thinking about Riven. Riven had been her counterpart for the last 3 years, the human liaison assigned to the Concord Embassy on Threshold Station. He was unremarkable by human standards. No augmentations, no rank insignia beyond a modest fleet pin, a face that creased easily into something between amusement and exhaustion. He drank too much of the bitter black liquid humans called coffee, and he asked too many questions that seemed innocent until you realized, days later, exactly what he'd been mapping in his head. 3 weeks ago, he had stopped showing up to the trade briefings. 2 weeks ago, his office had been empty. Yesterday, every human vessel docked at Threshold Station had undocked in perfect, silent synchronization and vanished into slipspace without a single farewell transmission. Celera requested an emergency audience with the Council. It was granted in less than an hour, a speed that told her how frightened everyone already was. "You know them," said the Council speaker, a towering Voss elder whose 4 eyes all fixed on her at once. "Tell us why." "I don't know why," Celera admitted. "But I know humans don't leave things unfinished. If they've withdrawn from the Alliance, it's because they've already finished whatever they came here to do." The chamber went very quiet. "Finished what, exactly?" the speaker asked. Celera didn't have an answer, but she intended to get one. She found Riven 6 days later, not through official channels. Those had gone dark, but through an old comm frequency he'd given her once, half as a joke, during a diplomatic dinner where he'd had 1 glass of Etherean wine too many. "If you ever need to reach me and everything else is broken," he'd said, "use this one. It's old. Nobody remembers it exists." That's the point. She hadn't understood him then. She did now. The signal took 4 days to connect. When Riven's face finally resolved on her screen, he looked older than she remembered, not in years, but in weight. The way a person looks after carrying something heavy for a long time and finally setting it down. "Celera." He almost smiled. "I wondered if you'd use that frequency. Why did you leave?" He exhaled, long and slow. "Can I show you something first? It'll answer the question better than I can." The image that replaced his face was not what she expected. She had braced herself for fleet deployments, superweapons, the grim architecture of a species preparing for war. Instead, she saw a star chart, Alliance space, rendered in the familiar blue and gold cartography humans always used, and scattered across it, hundreds of small red markers. "Do you know what those are?" Riven asked. "No." Alliance colonies and outposts that were quietly failing. Resource collapse, ecological cascade, disease vectors your medical databases hadn't cataloged yet, generation ships that were never going to reach their destinations. Things your own species didn't know were happening, because the Alliance bureaucracy buries bad news under 9 layers of committee review before anyone with authority ever sees it. "We know, because we read everything. It's sort of our thing." Celera stared at the map. She recognized some of the markers now. The Aether agricultural colony on Perrin's Reach, which she'd been told was thriving. The Voss deep space relay that had gone dark 18 months ago, officially attributed to routine maintenance. "We spent the last 4 years fixing what we could quietly," Riven continued, "and cataloging what we couldn't fix without stepping on toes. The Alliance doesn't like it when member species act unilaterally, even to help. So we asked, and filed motions, and sat through committee hearings, and watched half of these markers turn from yellow to red while the Council debated jurisdictional precedent." "So you left?" Celera said quietly. "So we left the Alliance," Riven corrected. "Not the galaxy. There's a difference, and it's an important one. So listen carefully, Because I need you to carry this back to your council exactly as I say it. Celera straightened. This was the Riven she recognized, the one who chose words like a sculptor chose chisel strokes, deliberately, one at a time. Humanity isn't retreating, and we're not declaring war, he said. We're simply no longer bound by an institution that moves slower than the problems it exists to solve. Every ship, every relief convoy, every med frigate we have is already underway to the red markers on that map. We're not doing it as Alliance members anymore. We're doing it as neighbors. That's a choice we're allowed to make on our own, and we intend to keep making it, with or without anyone's permission. The Council will see this as a threat, Celera said. A species with that much reach acting outside Alliance oversight. I know how they'll see it. Something flickered behind Riven's eyes. Not anger, something closer to tired disappointment. That's exactly the problem, Celera. You have a dying colony on Perrin's reach, and the first thing your instincts reach for is threat assessment. We stopped waiting for that instinct to catch up. She had no answer to that. It sat in her chest like a stone. Panic, in the days that followed, took strange and varied forms across the Alliance worlds. Some councils convened emergency defense summits, certain that humanity's withdrawal was the prelude to conquest. Others accused humanity of abandonment, of leaving the Alliance to face its own failures alone. A few, a very few, simply asked the quiet, unglamorous question Celera had been asking herself since that first 11-word message. What happens to Perrin's reach now? The answer arrived 11 days later, when a convoy of unmarked human relief ships entered Perrin's reach orbit, deployed atmospheric processors to stabilize the failing biosphere, and left again within 72 hours without requesting landing rights, trade concessions, or so much as a formal greeting from the colonial administration. They simply fixed what was broken and moved on to the next red marker. Celera stood on the observation deck of Threshold Station, watching the last human transport vanish into slipspace, and thought about something Riven had said in their final exchange, right before he cut the signal. We didn't leave because we stopped caring about the Alliance, Celera. We left because we never stopped caring about the people in it. And somewhere along the way those became two very different things. The Council would spend months arguing about whether humanity's withdrawal constituted a diplomatic crisis, a security threat, or an act of extraordinary generosity that shamed every other member species into silence. They would debate protocol, precedent, and the delicate question of how to formally respond to a species that had simply stopped asking for permission. But out among the stars, the red markers were turning yellow, one by one, whether the Council had reached a decision or not. Celera didn't wait for the Council's verdict. She requested reassignment to the newly formed Human Contact Office, a small, unglamorous post nobody else wanted, dealing with a government that no longer answered to anyone but itself. She wanted to be there the next time Riven's ship came through. She had a feeling it wouldn't be the last time humanity showed the galaxy exactly what neighbors meant when they stopped waiting for permission to be good ones.